All right, let's dive in. Today we're getting up close and personal with a creature that's known for its, well, let's just say, unique defense mechanism,
You're talking about the striped skunk, right?
the one and only. But today, we're going beyond the stink.
Yeah, there's so much more to these guys than just their smell.
Absolutely. We're going to uncover their fascinating biology, their crucial role in the ecosystem, and even some tips for, keeping things peaceful should you ever encounter one face to face.
Sounds good. Where should we start?
Well, I think we have to start with that black and white fur, right? I mean, it's iconic. They look like little bandits running around.
It's definitely striking, and it's not just for looks. That bold pattern is actually a really important warning signal. It's a concept called aposematism.
Aposematism.
Yeah, basically it's like nature's version of a hazard sign. The skunk is advertising that it's trouble and predators should steer clear.
So it's like they're saying, hey, don't even think about messing with me.
Exactly. It's a pretty clever survival tactic. They're sending a clear message before they even have to use their ultimate weapon.
Speaking of which, I think we need to talk about the elephant, or rather the skunk, in the room. That infamous spray. I've always wondered what exactly makes it so potent.
Well, it all comes down to sulfur-based compounds called thiols. They're organic compounds that contain sulfur, and they pack a serious punch when it comes to smell.
Thiols, huh? So that's the secret ingredient in their stink bomb.
You could say that. And they can accurately aim their spray up to 10 feet, by the way.
10 feet. No wonder people give them such a wide berth.
Yeah, but skunks aren't actually eager to spray. It takes a lot of energy to produce that stuff, and they have a limited supply.
So they're not just out there spraying everything that moves. There's a method to their madness.
Exactly. Before they unleash that stink bomb, they give a series of warnings.
Like what?
They'll stomp their feet, raise their tail high, and even hiss and chatter their teeth. It's quite a show.
So they're actually giving fair warning before they resort to chemical warfare.
Exactly. And, some predators have actually developed a tolerance to the smell.
Tolerance to that smell. Wow. I guess you got to be pretty hungry to risk it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered the smell, but where do these little stink bombs actually hang out? What's their preferred habitat?
Well, that's the interesting thing about striped skunks. They're incredibly adaptable.
Adaptable. In what way?
I mean, they can be found all across North America, from forests to grasslands to suburban backyards. They're not too picky when it comes to habitat, as long as there's plenty of cover.
So they could be living closer than we think. Wow, I never realized how widespread they are. So what are they doing in all those different environments? What's keeping them busy, aside from, plotting to spray unsuspecting humans?
They're not plotting anything. Remember, they're mostly solitary creatures. They're just looking for a safe place to den.
And where do they find those dens?
Well, they often take over burrows that have been abandoned by other animals, like foxes or groundhogs. They're quite resourceful.
Makes sense. It's like they're the ultimate house flippers of the animal kingdom. They're taking these abandoned digs and turning them into cozy skunk havens. I'm curious about their diet, though. What are they munching on in all those different environments?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. Striped skunks are true omnivores.
Omnivores. So they'll eat pretty much anything.
Pretty much. And their diet changes with the seasons.
Oh, that's interesting. So they have like a seasonal menu.
You could say that. During the warmer months, when insects are plentiful, they'll gobble up beetles, grasshoppers, grubs, you name it.
All the creepy crawlies that most people try to avoid.
Exactly. Which actually makes them pretty beneficial to farmers and gardeners. They're like natural pest control.
So they're actually doing us a favor by keeping those pest populations in check. Huh. I never thought of them as helpful to gardeners.
They are. But their culinary adventures don't stop there. They also eat small rodents, birds, eggs, and even carrion.
Wow. So they're like the sanitation crew of the ecosystem, keeping the pest populations down and cleaning up the neighborhood.
Yeah.
What happens, though, when the weather turns cold and all the bugs disappear? What do they eat then?
Well, when winter comes around, their diet shifts to more plant-based foods, berries, nuts, seeds, that sort of thing. But, being the adaptable creatures they are, they've also learned to exploit another food source, especially in urban areas.
Let me guess. Garbage cans.
You got it. Unsecured trash cans are like a buffet for a hungry skunk. And that's where they can sometimes run into trouble with humans.
Yeah, I can imagine. Nobody wants a skunk rummaging through their trash, no matter how resourceful they might be.
Yeah.
But it does speak to their intelligence, doesn't it? They're figuring out how to thrive even in human-dominated landscapes.
Exactly. They're survivors. And speaking of survival, let's talk about their social lives, or lack thereof. For most of the year, striped skunks are pretty solitary creatures.
So they're loners. Except maybe when it comes to, finding a mate.
You could say that. Breeding season, which usually happens in late winter or early spring, is the only time you'll see skunks really congregating.
So it's all about independence until love is in the air, huh?
Something like that. And once the mating is done, the females are on their own to raise their young.
How many babies do they usually have?
A litter of 4 to 7 kits is typical. And skunk mothers are dedicated parents, let me tell you.
I bet. Raising a litter of little stink bombs can't be easy.
It's definitely a challenge. The mother nurses her kits for several weeks and teaches them all the essentials of skunk survival.
Like what?
How to forage for food, avoid predators, and of course, how to use that powerful spray.
It's like boot camp for baby skunks.
Exactly. They stay with their mother for several months, learning everything they need to know, and then in the fall, they venture out on their own.
So from solitary youngsters to solitary adults, with just a brief period of family life in between, that's pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
It seems like we've only scratched the surface when it comes to the striped skunk. There's so much more to them than meets the eye, or should I say, the nose.
Absolutely. And despite their solitary nature and that infamous smell, they actually play a really important role in the ecosystem.
Really. There's more to them than just their stink. What makes them so important?
Well, you could say they're the unsung heroes of the ecosystem.
Wow. We started with stink bombs, and now we're talking about heroes. What a turnaround.
Think about it. They're natural pest controllers. They help keep those insect and rodent populations in check. That's huge for farmers, gardeners, and the overall balance of nature.
Wow, I never thought of it that way.
And their scavenging habits. They help with decomposition, cleaning up carrion, and returning those nutrients to the soil. They really do a lot for the environment.
It's amazing how a creature that's often perceived as a nuisance actually plays such a vital role in maintaining the balance of the ecosystem.
It is. But of course, living in close proximity to humans inevitably leads to some encounters, and some of those encounters can be a little unpleasant.
Yeah, you're right. I have to admit, I'm still a bit apprehensive about crossing paths with one. What's the best way to avoid getting sprayed? Any tips for our listeners?
Well, the key is prevention and understanding. First things first, secure your trash cans.
Secure the buffet? Got it. What else?
Remove any potential den sites around your property. Seal up any openings under decks or sheds, and keep your yard clear of brush piles.
Okay, makes sense. No inviting hideouts for skunks.
Exactly. And if you have pets, don't leave their food outside, especially at night.
Okay, no midnight snacks for Fido. But what if, despite our best efforts, we do come face to face with a skunk? What then?
The most important thing is to stay calm.
Easier said than done.
I know, but remember, they don't want to spray you any more than you want to be sprayed.
That's a good point.
So just slowly back away. Give them plenty of space and avoid making any sudden movements that might startle them.
Okay, easy does it. No sudden movements. But what if, hypothetically speaking, someone isn't quite quick enough and the worst happens?
Well, if you or your pet do end up getting sprayed, there's a tried and true remedy that can help neutralize that odor.
Tell me there's a magic potion for this.
It's not exactly magic, but it works wonders. You need hydrogen peroxide, baking soda, and a little bit of dish soap.
Okay, I'm writing this down.
Mix those together and apply it to the affected area. Just be careful around the eyes. Let it sit for a few minutes and then rinse thoroughly.
That sounds a lot more manageable than living with that smell forever. Okay, so we've got a plan for damage control. Anything else we should keep in mind when it comes to skunk encounters?
Well, just remember that skunks can carry rabies, just like other wild animals.
Oh, right.
So it's really important to avoid contact and never try to handle them. If you see a skunk acting strangely, like being out during the day or showing aggression, it's best to contact your local animal control.
Right, safety first. No matter how curious we get, it's best to admire them from a distance. It seems like we've covered a lot of ground here, but I feel like there's still that elephant, or rather skunk, in the room that we haven't fully addressed.
You mean the smell?
Exactly. We've talked about the spray, but what exactly makes it so awful? What's the science behind the stink?
It all comes down to those thiols. Remember those sulfur-based compounds we were talking about?
Right, the secret ingredient in the stink bomb.
Exactly. And even though they're pretty simple molecules, they have a huge impact on our sense of smell.
Simple molecules, big stink. Why are they so potent, though?
Well, for one thing, thiols are volatile. That means they evaporate into the air really easily.
So when a skunk sprays, Those molecules are basically launched into the air and carried by the wind.
Exactly. That's why you can smell a skunk from so far away. But the smell itself, the way we perceive it, that comes from how our noses and brains are wired to detect these molecules. Our olfactory receptors, the ones in our noses, are super sensitive to thiols.
So our noses are basically designed to pick up on skunk spray.
But why? Why do we perceive that smell as so unpleasant?
Well, it's probably an evolutionary adaptation. Think about it. A strong, repulsive smell is a pretty effective way to keep animals, including humans, away from danger.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's nature's way of saying, danger, stay back. But there's another thing that's always baffled me. Why does the smell linger for so long? It's like it gets into everything.
That's because thiols are really good at sticking to surfaces. They can cling to clothes, fur, your skin, you name it, and they're not easily washed away. Plus, they break down really slowly, which means that the odor can stick around for days or even weeks if it's not treated properly.
Oh, wow. It's like a stinky shadow. No wonder people are so desperate to get rid of that smell. Are there any other ways to combat that skunk odor besides the hydrogen peroxide mix?
There are tons of home remedies out there, but not all of them are actually that effective.
Well, some people swear by tomato juice, but there's really not a lot of scientific evidence to support that. Vinegar can help neutralize some of the odor, but it's not a miracle cure. You can also find commercial products that are designed specifically for skunk odor removal, and those can be pretty effective.
Mhm.
The key is to act quickly. You got to get those thiols before they really settle in.
So it's a race against time. The faster you act, the better your chances of winning the battle against the stink. Honestly, though, I'm kind of starting to appreciate this unique defense mechanism. It's undeniably effective.
It is. It really speaks to the power of nature's adaptations. And there's another interesting thing about skunk spray that most people don't realize. Skunks can actually control the intensity and concentration of their spray.
Really. So it's not just like a one-size-fits-all weapon.
Nope. They can adjust it depending on how threatened they feel. For smaller threats, they might just release a few droplets as a warning. But for larger predators, they can let loose a powerful cone-shaped spray that can reach up to 10 feet, like we talked about earlier.
It's like they have different settings on their stink bombs. That's incredible. Is that something they learn to do, or is it instinctive?
It's a little bit of both. The basic instinct to spray is definitely innate, but young skunks do learn to refine their technique by watching their mothers. They observe her behavior and practice their aim until they've basically mastered the art of the stink bomb.
Smelly apprenticeship. So we've talked a lot about their role in pest control and decomposition, but I'm curious about their place in the food web. Who preys on skunks?
Well, even with their powerful defense mechanisms, skunks aren't invincible. They do have predators, although the list is pretty short because, well, the smell.
Right.
Great horned owls are one of their main predators, though.
Really?
Yeah. They have an incredible sense of smell, but they're also surprisingly tolerant of the skunk spray.
Wow. I guess when you're hungry enough, even a skunk starts to look appetizing. What about other predators? Are there any others that will take on a skunk?
Coyotes and bobcats will also prey on skunks sometimes, but they tend to be more cautious. They usually target younger or injured individuals. And of course, sometimes domestic dogs have run-ins with skunks.
Yeah, which usually doesn't end well for the dog
Hmm?
or the owner.
Huh.
It's a good reminder that even though we might find skunks fascinating, we should treat them with respect. They're wild animals, after all.
Absolutely. We need to understand their boundaries and avoid provoking them. They need their space and their resources just like any other creature.
Right. It's about finding that balance between humans and wildlife. I think that's an important message for our listeners. We've been diving deep into the world of the striped skunk today, and we've learned so much about their biology, their behavior, and even the science behind that infamous smell.
We have. It's been quite the journey. We started with stink bombs, and now we're talking about ecosystem heroes.
It just goes to show that there's always more to a creature than meets the eye, or in this case, the nose.
Exactly. We often make judgments based on first impressions, but when we take the time to learn more about the natural world, we often discover incredible things.
We really do. And I think it's safe to say that